Welcome to Doctrine and Covenants. We're doing lesson 39 and we're doing sections 106 through 108. And I named this one Like Unto Moses. I really enjoyed particularly section 107 at this time because of the organization it establishes for the church is so well done by the Lord that its organization seems to stand pretty strong even to our day. And with that, I'm Farrell.
And I'm Rhonda Pickering.
And you can always find us at propheticappointments.com. Okay, jumping right in. D&C 106 is a revelation given to the prophet Joseph Smith at Kirtland, Ohio on November 25th, 1834. This revelation is directed at Warren, an older brother of Oliver Cowdery. Warren Cowdery is called as a local presiding officer. And then he gets into the second coming, which is one of our fun topics. And great blessings follow the faithful service in the church.
And Warren's going to serve faithfully until about 1838. He's going to kind of exit with Oliver. They were both educated men, and they fell into the trap of thinking that they knew better and more than their priesthood head, and that's a dangerous position.
On November 8th, here in just a little less than 2 months, we're going to have a day of prophecy again. It's kind of, I think I'll probably try to make this an annual event where we go through the prophecies, updates, everything that we are doing, and a lot of reinforcement of the background of the numbers of Daniel and the prophetic updates of what's going on all over the world and otherwise. Here on November the 8th, I'm inviting you to join us. It is in location of Mount Pleasant at the Senior Center. Now, just be aware, there's only 200 seats, and last time they sold out in 2 weeks. So if this is something you're interested in, go ahead and go to our website. Our website is www.propheticappointments.com and purchase your tickets. We'll be going, like I said, through all these events. We do offer a lunch that we have Subway cater sandwiches, and then we add a few things to it, a drink and, like cheese sticks and a few things. So just be aware, this is not something we're doing to make money really to speak of. We're just trying to provide this service so you don't have to go out and eat if you want to. That being said, here's the location at the Senior Center here in Mount Pleasant. That is the map and the address of how to get there. And like I said, November the 8th on the calendar, mark it on your calendar if you want to do this, but mostly don't forget to go get your tickets right away. And we're just grateful to be able to do this again. It was a major, major enjoyable experience last time, I think, for those who came, and just very glad to see you and interact in a personal way. Like I said, November 8th, 2025, Day of Prophecy, Mount Pleasant Senior Center. And with that, looking forward to seeing you. Well, and conceptually, mostly more than Joseph Smith in this instance, because Joseph, sometimes we might have officials in the church that might be there that test us sometimes.
Well, I was referring not that they aren't human, but that we set them in order.
But that's never our place to correct anybody who's in a leadership position over us, unless, like a wife sometimes, my wife corrects me sometimes in love, and that's not in any
that's a helpmate.
Yeah. Anyway, that being said, jumping ahead. Right out of the gate, we're going to get into some fun stuff for Rhonda. And again, verily I say unto you, the coming of the Lord draweth nigh, and it overtakes the world as a thief in the night. Therefore, gird up your loins, that you may be the children of light, that day shall not overtake you as a thief. And in this point in time, there's some really cool information.
I want to chase a rabbit.
Yeah. Rhonda has on thieves in the night and the whole concept.
Yeah. Well, it's an idiom. It's a Hebrew idiom. And so we'll talk about that in just a minute too. But also if you do a word study about the thief in scripture, it's very interesting and enlightening. Before we jump into the study on the thief, though, I did want to say that in D&C section 106, I just love verse 8, and I will give him grace and assurance wherewith he may stand if he continue to be faithful. And so I just love the grace and assurance part that is encouraging to all of us as well. Anyway, so about the thief, is Jesus coming as a thief? In Revelation chapter 16, it says, "Behold, I come as a thief."
Well, he actually uses the words that it not overtake the world as a thief.
Which I
And
love in here in DNC 106. I want to draw attention to the fact that we're kind of referring to two different things here. Okay. So when we talk about the day of the Lord coming as a thief in the night, we just need to understand Jesus is not a thief. Never has been. As a matter of fact, in John chapter 10, he's the contrast to the thief. He is the good shepherd. And the good shepherd is the opposite of the thief in that parable, where it talks about Satan. It says that he's the thief, and that he comes not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. And so think about this in the context of the thief. The thief cometh to steal, to kill, and destroy. And then Jesus contrasts that, and he says a few verses later, I am the good shepherd. I'm not coming to kill and to destroy. I'm coming to lay down my life to save the sheep. And so again, Jesus is never the thief here. But we do have that scripture in Revelation 16. It says, "Behold, I come as a thief, and blessed is he that watcheth and that keepeth his garments." And that's kind of an interesting thing. What is it talking about? Keeping your garments. And I know that we all want to be faithful to our covenants and everything, but there's something specific that's going on here in the ancient temple. Lest he walk naked and they see his shame. So let's just jump back into the ancient temple at the time of Christ, the second temple, and there were guards at night in the temple, and it was part of the duties of the Levitical priests. Remember, we're going to talk a little bit about the sons of Aaron. They would be the ones that were doing the offerings, but Levi has other descendants besides Aaron, and these were the Levites, and there were musicians, and there were guards. And in this case, the idiom that is the thief in the night and watch your garments lest you walk naked has to do with falling asleep on the job. And that in and of itself has...
I remember this story.
That in and of itself has parallels, because there's a lot of end time prophecy that talks about people being asleep, like the 10 virgins. And even on the Mount of Transfiguration, it's fascinating that they keep falling asleep. Seems to be a condition of us in the end time, that we're sleeping on the job. Okay. But anciently in the temple, they would they had someone that would come around and check on the guards and say, "Peace be unto you." But if the superior receives no reply when he's checking on the guards, it's obvious that the guard has been caught asleep. And he would then rap the sleeping Levite with his stick. And the supervisor was even empowered to set his clothing, his covering, on fire as a punishment, so that he would have a hot coal and he would put it on his clothing. And everyone within earshot who heard the cries of the unfortunate sleeper would say, "What is that noise in the court?" "Oh, it's the sound of a Levite who has been wrapped and his covering set afire, for he has fallen asleep on his watch." Now, I'm reading this right off of the Temple Institute site, so I'm telling you, I'm not making this up, okay? But, you can imagine that if your clothing is on fire, you're going to rip off the clothing, and because you weren't prepared, you were sleeping on the job, you are now running naked and others can see your shame because they know what happened. Okay. Anyway, so that it's just an idiom, lest you walk naked and they see your shame. But the idea that the thief will come unexpectedly. Oh, by the way, the priest that had the job of checking on them was called the thief in the night, actually. So that you have an idiom going on there, but you also have, and all the parallels with the end time and being awake. But you also have the parallel that the day of Jehovah, the day of the Lord, comes as a thief in the night. That's what we read in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. And he has some interesting imagery here. He says, when this thief comes, the elements melt with fervent heat. And if you do word searching of elements melting with fervent heat, that happens at the end of the 6,000 years of man, the end of the world. That happens at that time. And then also it happens when the earth becomes celestial at the end of the millennium. But the elements melting with fervent heat at the end of the Gentile kingdoms, at the end of the world, has to do with mushrooming clouds of smoke and cities that become chaff in an instant. If you think of the atomic weapons that were used in World War II, or the weapons that we have now, I mean, they melt the soil. They I don't know what
Sheet of glass.
I don't know how to describe it other than the elements melt with fervent heat. Okay, so there's a warfare aspect to this too, that the works, the earth and also the works that are therein will be burned up, which again is the imagery of the end of the world. So it is the darkest time in the world's history because this thief that comes in the end time, in Isaiah, the king of Assyria, or in the New Testament, he's your antichrist figure. He's your huge opposition and test that comes right before the Savior comes. It is he serves as God's instrument for destroying a corrupt and dysfunctional humanity, and his coming heralds the end of the world, or the fall of Babylon, the end of Babylon. So he's a thief, and you can actually see it in Isaiah 10, verse 14, when he's bragging, and he says, I have impounded the wealth of peoples like a nest, and I have gathered up the whole world as one gathers abandoned eggs. And the next verse it says, and no one dared utter a peep. So I think he has imagery that's similar in Daniel 11.
Yeah, I was going to say this whole wealth scenario that, yeah.
So the last thing I wanted to tie it to is Jesus in Luke 12, when he says, if the good man of the house had known what hour the thief would come, think prophecy here, think the hour of judgment, and this time period here, it says he would have watched.
Right.
And that ties right back to the parable in 101, and a little bit what we'll be going into in a minute. But that's just a little background on the thief in Scripture.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating, this idea. I mean, in a sense, him saying he comes as a thief is also a surprise.
Right.
Yeah, but okay. All right. You obviously addressed some of the verses that we're going into in 106, which is right there.
Yeah, just focus on it. It says that he overtaketh the world.
Yeah, which we read already.
That's
yeah. Okay, we're jumping now into D&C 107, and we're going to start with verse 4. Why the first is called the Melchizedek priesthood is because Melchizedek was such a great high priest. Of course, you've been taught all your life, at least I know I was taught all my life, that the reason it didn't get called the holy priesthood after the order of the Son of God consistently is so that you didn't get too much repetition, so that it had respect. And that's why they used Melchizedek as a great name to name it, because he was such a great high priest. Being Shem,
it's also a little Hebrew as well, because they also don't use the name.
They use Adonai all the time.
Or Hashem, the name.
Hashem, the name, or Adonai, so that they don't repeat the name too much. Now, obviously, when we're into some of these things, it's really fascinating to me that we get right into structure of church government right out of the gate here. The Melchizedek priesthood holds the right of presidency and has power and authority over all the offices of the church in all ages of the world to administer in spiritual things. The presidency of the high priesthood after the order of Melchizedek has the right to officiate in all the offices of the church. So, in essence, this was established, this order that is established in 107 has been fundamental in keeping the organization of the church actually flowing quite a bit without great deals of contention, or, it's pretty much just flows directly front to back. So that people kind of know what to expect in general.
Well, I think it also we've kind of become more patterned over time.
Well, for sure, they worked out details along the way.
Exactly. There were a lot of things that we did work out.
One of the details that is that they obviously, we're going to get into it. Maybe I ought to wait to talk about it until we do. I think that's probably a good idea. The high priests, after the order of Melchizedek priesthood, have a right to officiate in their own standing under the direction of the presidency. So it's saying any high priest is an administrative office. You're in the role of administration, if you want to put it that way, I guess is the best way to put it. And they're under the direction of the presidency, obviously, and administering spiritual things, and also the office of elder priest or the Levitical order, teacher, deacon, and member. I love this. When we were in Israel, because of Melchizedek being talked about, I wanted to just touch quickly on the lovely opportunity we received where we took these pictures you're looking at here, where we were able to go to the temple of Melchizedek in the city of David, which is...
They believe that it dates to that time period.
Not only does it date there, but you can see obviously that symbolically, it kind of applies to the Temple of Melchizedek, and they actually call it that on many websites. They call it the Temple of Melchizedek. In fact, Israel, my channel, did a whole special on
right. You can learn about what those grooves in the floor were used for.
And we have a really cool story about that. That when we were there and we were trying to find it, of course, it's not really directly open to the public all the time yet because it's an active archaeological site. And we had obviously heard about it and got told where to look. And we went to where you look over the edge and you can see it down below. And one of our party, went to the guy that was holding the keys, if you want to go.
They weren't really busy.
And they weren't really busy, thankfully. It was during wartime, in essence. So we have a lot of opportunities to do some really fun stuff during those times. Anyway, long and short, he asked for permission and they gave it to us, and we were able to go down and actually take these wonderful pictures.
The gate and let us go to the archaeological site. So,
and it's fairly close to the Gihon Springs. Anyway.
And how does this relate to the layering of the city of David and Melchizedek?
Well, in essence, I think this particular thing wasn't real deep, but it was layered underneath the later levels of the city of David, in essence.
And they date it back to that time.
And they date it definitely to the time of Melchizedek, which is fun. It's just incredible, the archaeological witnesses the earth has given us of the biblical account of things. Anyway, so the high priest and elder are administering in spiritual things agreeable to the covenant and commandments of the church, and they have a right to officiate in all of the offices of the church when there are no higher authorities present. Obviously, higher authorities would be apostles and the authorities of the church, the general authorities. Anyway, so it's just really fascinating how much structure we were given in 107. That has really been a backbone of the organization of the church clear into our day, which is really beautiful.
Well, I love the priesthood courts and how they're administered.
Well, and that's why we get into this right in 107 too, where the bishopric is the presidency of the Aaronic priesthood, obviously, and holds the keys of authority of the same. And no man has a legal right to this office to hold the keys of this priesthood except he be a literal descendant of Aaron. Now that right out of the gate sounds like only a literal descendant of Aaron should have this role. And in a sense, it's saying the only one that has a right to this role is a literal descendant of Aaron. But it does give us an exception, and I showed the Newell K. Whitney store.
I just wanted to draw attention to the phrase, the legal right, because it's actually a word link when you look at the Aaronic priesthood, the Levitical priesthood, and when you see that word, someone who has a right to the priesthood, like is described in the Q&A on Isaiah in DNC 113, you are talking about a literal descendant of Aaron. And so it's important to see that word linking going on here, and that, you know, of course, DNC 113 and the restoration.
113 or 13:1.
Yes.
Okay.
So 113 is asking about the rod, and Isaiah 11:1, but also in DNC 13 verse 1, of course, it says that the sons of Levi,
Yes.
that the Aaronic priesthood was restored until the son of Levi offer again and offering in righteousness. And the reason that that's interesting is because when Oliver Cowdery records his version of what the angel said and everything, he said that the Aaronic priesthood was restored, that the sons of Levi would offer again.
Which both interpretations fit, I think.
Exactly.
I think.
But the point that we're trying to make here is that when we are talking about a descendant of Aaron having a legal right to officiate in his area of priesthood, that doesn't mean you're just going to waltz into, you know, a Melchizedek priesthood setup, and he has to be ordained in that case. We're talking about a situation where, kind of like the apostles in the 70s, they go out and they're traveling ministers, they go out into the world. We're talking about a situation where a Melchizedek priesthood has not been established yet. Right. That this, I think, would fall into play here.
Well, like the situation that is in Israel now, where they're preparing to build the temple, is
right.
It's got, you know, a lot of people have a lot of questions on it.
And I've heard a lot of people say, you know, well, they have no authority to be doing that. And I'm like, well, they have legal right to do Aaronic and Levitical functions.
Yeah. Going right into verse 19, to have the privilege of receiving, we've jumped to Melchizedek priesthood now. To have the privilege of receiving the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, to have the heavens opened unto them, and to commune with the general assembly of the church of the firstborn, and to exercise the communion in the presence of God the Father and Jesus the mediator of the new covenant. The church of the firstborn is, I think, one that's speculated about greatly, but it's not real complicated in one sense, because the firstborn is obviously Jesus Christ. And it just means that he's accepted you in. Personal acceptance, I would call that. You know,
I like that definition. And I love that picture. That's one of my favorite pictures that shows the veils drawn in the Kirtland Temple.
I love the fact that it shows all of them coming, Christ and Moses and Elijah too, coming down too.
Well, Elias is huge too. Yes.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Okay, so anyway, and to enjoy the communion and the presence of God the Father and Jesus the mediator of the new covenant. I think most of us don't live to that. It's like the Aaronic priesthood says it has the keys to the administering of angels. And I don't think, well, you could argue a lot of us get visitation of angels.
Yeah,
but we don't.
There's a lot of workarounds.
Yeah, you could argue some of that. But I'm just saying.
In its fullest sense.
In its fullest sense, like Joseph received it. It's not as common by a long shot. Not as common.
But it is certainly the goal and the aim.
Yeah, I've actually really left some of our Christian brothers' songs where they let me see you face to face. I think there's a time in our progression where we get that opportunity, and I'm looking way forward to it. Of course, the Melchizedek priesthood has 3 presiding high priests chosen by the body. Now, in this instance, I think the body is the body of the 12 in this instance, and I'll get to why I believe that here in a minute. Appointed and ordained to that office and upheld by the confidence, faith, and prayer of the church. They form a quorum of the presidency of the church. Now, why do I say I believe it's the 12 that make that appointment? Well, it's later on in this section. Obviously, that's what we do today. The 12 do make that appointment. But I was going to say, in essence, I think it's actually told why here shortly as we go forward, because you find in these next few verses here, it gives you equivalence of authority, which is fascinating in D&C 107. And it says the 12 traveling councils are called to be the 12 apostles or special witnesses of the name of Christ in all the world, thus differing from other offices in the church in their duties and calling. And they form a quorum equal in authority and power to the three presidents previously mentioned. So what I'm saying right there is you literally see that the 12 apostles have authority, according to D&C 107, equal to the first presidency. It goes on to say, clearly, though, they have to be, in order to have that authority, they have to be unanimous. In other words, it's a full-on 100%.
Well, and this again is going to be the reason that Brigham Young is going to
He actually
this fact that,
Yeah.
that it is the leadership of the quorum of the 12 that should lead the church.
And he actually makes that claim in Nauvoo,
Right.
but then he also completely brings the saints across the plains as head of the 12. They haven't even reorganized the first presidency yet.
Well, and I love it too, because there's a verse in here that actually says, I think it is verse 91. I can pull it quick. And again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church and to be like unto Moses. And
we're going to get there. Don't jump the gun.
Totally a role that Brigham played at that time.
Absolutely. So just going forward, they form a quorum equal in authority to the power of the three presidents previously mentioned. Then it goes on to say the 70 are also called to preach the gospel and to be special witnesses unto the Gentiles and in all the world, thus differing from the other officers of the church in their duty and calling. They form a quorum equal in authority to that of the 12 special witnesses or the apostles just named. So what that really says, as I read it, in essence, that if we had a quorum of 70 duly organized and operating, functioning, and the first presidency and the 12, by some crazy circumstances, were all taken, the 70 could reorganize, the 70s as a majority could reorganize the church.
And that's never happened.
It's never happened, but I'm saying theoretically, that's what that scripture is saying.
But I do.
Although it does say that they have to do it by unanimous vote.
And like we were talking, we have the foundation of the priesthood quorums here in D&C 107, but for me, it's fascinating to study the history, like, of the quorums of 70. Like there were 35 when quorums of 70 when.
Well, yeah, but this is the first quorum of 70.
Right, but at the time of Joseph Smith, when he was martyred, there were 35 quorums of 70. And then by the time you got to the administration of John Taylor, because there got to be, and we could do a whole history on this, so I don't want to take too much time to do that. But by the time you got to John Taylor, you had diminished down to 3 quorums of 70. And so John Taylor is going to be the one that restructures it and refills up the quorum of 70s again. But again, there's been a lot of, as the church grew from a organization that could fit in one room to the millions that we see today, the functions and the duties of these offices had to be flexible with the quorums and with their job description as it changed over time. It's fascinating to study, but it's also fascinating that the Lord established a foundation that could grow with the church.
And I don't know if many of you are as old as I am, but those who of us are know that there used to be 70s quorums in the States that were local missionary branches.
Yeah.
And for administration reasons, I think they kind of did away with that, and they more fully organized the first quorum of 70 and made it so that it was more assistance to the 12, like it was originally stated here in 107. Because of the size of the church, they had they had to grow the administration of the church and get regional 70s and actually make it more a larger structure of organization, because the organization is now very huge. I mean, it's big.
And how it functions is almost more making the point that in Joseph Smith's day, the presiding presidency in Kirtland, like the first presidency, leadership of the church, was also the stake presidency.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap.
Both hats, you know.
Because the church was still small. Moving on, the decision of these quorums, or either of them, are to be made in righteousness, holiness, lowliness of heart, meekness, and long suffering, and in faith and virtue, and knowledge, temperance, patience, godliness, brotherly kindness, and charity. So that's just a general caution.
But don't you wish that every
administration was that way?
every court in priesthood function?
Well, every court in the law of the land would be nice too.
Yeah, I'm like, well, that's the goal, huh?
I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful, and I have seen situations where that played out.
It's almost like Corinthians, you know,
with so much love, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so beautiful that is how we are supposed to judge, and
how we're supposed to administer in
administer
all of the offices of the church, really.
Right. And so back on the line of developments that have happened in priesthood organization over the years, in verse, let me see, it would be in verse 39, it talks about it's the duty of the 12 in all large branches of the church to ordain evangelical ministers. And then in verse 40, it says that this is an office that's handed from father to son. So we learn with Melchizedek priesthood that it's without father and without mother. It is based on ordination and worthiness, whereas we learned with Aaronic priesthood that they have a legal right if they can prove their lineage. And then we have this organization that is called evangelical ministers. So we're going to have to go to Joseph Smith to have him explain that.
Yeah, because we don't really talk about evangelical.
We don't, right?
It's actually we think of it as a line of Christians.
So Joseph Smith said that an evangelist is a patriarch. Even the oldest man of the blood of Joseph or of the seed of Abraham, wherever the church of Christ is established in the earth, there should be a patriarch for the benefit of the posterity of the saints, as it was with Jacob in giving his patriarchal blessings unto his son. So, of course, we know that there used to be Joseph Smith Sr. was the first.
Well, the presiding
church patriarch, and it went from father to son. It went in a lineal descent, and I just absolutely love this. I'm fascinated with all of the developments that have happened with priesthood quorums over the years, and I just love this book, Lost Legacy, by Irene Bates and E. Gary Smith, where it talks about what happened and the changes that happened over time with the patriarch of the church. So again, today we have stake patriarchs, right? And what a beautiful opportunity to be able to have a patriarchal blessing.
Absolutely, and I think that's very beautiful. But also, you know, and I kind of didn't really cover directly, but it goes into the calling and their dates of Adam to Seth and on down through the lineage that he called them to, that patriarchal lineage almost, in essence.
And I absolutely love it. I mean, if we had time to chase all the rabbits in the world, of course, the first 10 names make a prophecy when you do their names. And then also, I just love that here you have Adam meeting with his posterity and here at the beginning of the world, and then that in that same valley we're going
to have another meeting.
I mean, it makes the whole history of the world chiastic. I
love that.
It's beautiful.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on to bishops. Nevertheless, a bishop must be chosen from the high priesthood unless there's a literal descendant of Aaron. So what we have is, because a high priest is able to preside in all functions of the church, in essence, then you have the situation where if there is not a literal descendant of Aaron. A high priest can take on that role. For unless he is a literal descendant of Aaron, he cannot hold the keys of that priesthood. Nevertheless, a high priest that is after the order of Melchizedek may be set apart under the ministering of temporal things, having a knowledge of them by the Spirit of truth. So he basically gave us a patch until Israel is set in order and reestablished. In essence, we have a patch, if you want to call it that, a bridge to get to that point again.
And again, we'll see eventually in the millennial day how these priesthoods will function together in that time
It'll
period.
be interesting to have more clarification on how that takes place.
But just to back you up, that this is something that is going to happen, that the literal descendants of Aaron will eventually take their place in the functioning of priesthood. It says in Isaiah 56, verse 7, it says that their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted on my altar. And so if you look at what is sandwiching this time period when they will be accepted, it says right before it and right after it, for my house is a house of prayer for all nations. Again, that goes straight back to the beginning of Daniel's vision about these offerings. It began with prayer on temple.
I love that. I also would like to talk about a topic that's been kind of a little bit a hot topic in current events right now, which is this whole idea, is Israel Israel? We have very prominent people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and people who are actually taking a little opposition to the idea of Israel. I'm not one who actually takes that position, mostly because of our historical heritage, wherein we have Orson Hyde going to the Holy Land and dedicating the land to the gathering of Israel. So even if not all the circumstances are perfect, which I would agree they're not everything Israel has done in going back to the Holy Land has been, what's the word I'm looking, without secret combinations, I still think that in God's plan, this has all taken place the way he wanted it to.
Well,
I think we're seeing the gathering of Israel. And if you've actually studied what happened in the 48 war and the miracles that took place that delivered Israel from all of its enemies, miracles, and also in the 6-day war, the miracles that took place on the Sinai and all of the different things that took place, you would be amiss to think that God's hand wasn't in it. Now, have they done everything honorable? Is the government of Israel completely without secret combinations? Well, that's highly unlikely. However, overall, God is blessing the effort. It's pretty obvious to me.
Well, I want to just go straight to 3rd Nephi, where Jesus, in his discourse on how the house of Israel is going to be restored, I mean, he says it over and over again. I'll just read the last verse of 3rd Nephi 20. It says, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, all these things shall surely come, even as the Father hath commanded me. Then shall this covenant which the Father hath covenanted with his people be fulfilled. And then shall Jerusalem be inhabited again with my people, and it shall be the land of their inheritance." This is like as literal and as real as you can get. And
I was going to go on to say, I've had some people quote to me that the Jews who say they are Jews but of the synagogue of Satan from Revelation
chapter 2 and 3, verse 7 in each chapter.
When it goes into that, understand, yes, that's true, but God uses what the wicked try to do and still accomplishes work.
And if you go to Ether chapter 8 and you talk about the secret combinations on this land, does that mean there's going to not be a righteous remnant that
exactly
God and serve him? It plays out over there as well.
That's what I say. So don't fall into this trap of thinking that, what's the word I'm looking for? Don't fall into this trap of feeling like Israel is not Israel. It is absolutely Israel, and it is absolutely prophetic.
Yeah, it hasn't changed location for 4,000
Yep.
years. Oh, if you haven't done this, you've got to go out and you've got to look up Pilgrim Road dedication. And then Rubio was there, Netanyahu was there. You can type any of those names in. It'll take you straight to the dedication of the Pilgrim's Road last week. And if you think that is not evidence that Jerusalem is the same Jerusalem that was there 4,000 years ago when Abraham was promised that land, and Jesus says over and over again, the Father will complete his covenants that fulfill them that he made with Israel.
And so, in essence, what we're saying is just because Israel's government isn't perfect, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly.
Just because America's government's not perfect, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Let's see.
You know,
there's going to be a new Jerusalem and there's going to be an old Jerusalem, and the law will go forth from Zion and the word from Jerusalem.
So I just wanted to bring that out so that I kind of give you our perspective on this, that yes, Israel is Israel, and the miracles that have brought it about would be foolish to deny, just so you know. The beautiful things that are happening. Does that mean it's going to be all perfect? No. I actually sometimes have wondered if the big players in the whole thing is going to be directly involved with Israel's government.
Okay, can I tell you a secret? This is why I love church history, is because it's never been perfect. And it, to me, is encouraging when I look at church history and see how messy things were sometimes, because it gives me hope that the Lord's got to work with
messy, with people,
sinful people, that he has a magnificent plan.
Just going on record, just so you know, I don't think the rapture is happening on trumpets. And this will come out probably after trumpets. So you'll probably be able to test me on that. Maybe I'll.
I was just going to say, for several reasons.
Yeah, just so you know, this was recorded before trumpets. And so if you see this afterwards, you know that I kind of didn't think that was happening. Okay. And also, of course, I guess I could not publish it. If it does happen, I guess. Of course, hopefully we wouldn't be here, right? No, I'm joking.
88 Reasons Jesus is Coming in 1988, right?
Yeah, right. Like that was happening.
That was a book, actually.
Yeah. And also, to be a judge in Israel, to do the business of the church, to sit in judgment on transgressors upon testimony, as it shall be laid before him according to the law, by the assistance of his counselors, whom he has chosen or will choose amongst the elders of the church. So the bishops and his counselors are to be a judge in Israel, and we know that that's standard procedure and standard understanding. So I don't need to spend a lot of time on that. It's just the way we understand this, okay? This is the duty of bishop, who is not a literal descendant of Aaron, but has been ordained to the high priesthood after the order of Melchizedek. Thus shall he be a judge, even a common judge among the inhabitants of Zion, or in the stake of Zion, or in any branch of the church where he shall be set apart unto this ministry, until the borders of Zion are enlarged and it becomes necessary to have other bishops and judges in Zion or elsewhere. So it's saying basically it's going to expand. Of course, we know it's way expanded in our day.
Well, and it's so beautiful that it's duplicatable, that the quorums can expand.
It's like a tree grown out, and Christ is the trunk of the tree. It's by what through all things flow. But a literal descendant of Aaron has a legal right to this presidency of this priesthood, to the keys of this ministry, to act in the office of bishop independently without counselors, except in the case where a president of the high priesthood after the order of Melchizedek is tried. And in that instance, he to sit as a judge in Israel. So he's saying they can do it unless it's the presidency of the high priesthood being tried, and then he cannot. Obviously, it's got to be by, in the case of that, it'd be by the 12 apostles, I would assume. Which, you're saying, does that ever happen? Well, it actually did. They actually brought Joseph to trial once in all this situation. And again, barely I say unto you, the most important business of the church and the most difficult cases of the church, insomuch there is not satisfaction amongst the decision of the bishop or judges, it shall be handed over and carried up to the High Council, or we call it the High Council today, the Council of the Church before the presidency of the High Priesthood. Well, that's actually saying it could escalate all the way to the top, although you don't think that would happen very often. That's like almost going Supreme Court +1. That's pretty big. Don't think I know of a lot of cases that get handled that way, although there probably is a few from time to time. And the presidency of the Council of the High Priesthood shall have power to call other high priests, even 12, to assist as counselors, and thus the presidency of the High Priesthood and its counselors shall have power to decide upon testimony according to the laws of the church. So that's actually saying it can create high councils available throughout the organization of the church. I think that's beautiful. And then it goes on, and this is what's amazing to me. No one is above the law, so to speak. And it says it right here. There is not any person belonging to the church who is exempt from this council of the church. And insomuch as the president of the high priesthood shall transgress, he shall be had in remembrance before the common council of the church, who shall be assisted by 12 counselors of the high priesthood. So, I mean, it just goes on to say that even the highest levels of the church are not exempt. The hand of justice is equal and should be blind, so to speak, is the reason why Lady Justice is that way, that they're blind to position and they judge based on the merit of the case. That's the concept. Although I'd hate to ever see that happen, it's provided for. So as we move forward, it just clarifies this. Thus, none shall be exempt from the justice and the laws of God, that all things may be done, and in solemnity before him according to the truth and righteousness. So basically it's saying everybody is subject to correction, which is a beautiful thing. And again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church and be like unto Moses. Well, that's huge. I mean, we have it basically saying that is his role, to be like unto Moses.
And it ties back to TNC 103 when it
Absolutely.
talks about the redemption of Zion.
Which we're going to go here in just a second. Behold, here is wisdom, yea, he is to be a seer, a revelator, a translator, and a prophet, having all the gifts of God, which he bestows upon the head of the church. So his calling is literally to be like unto Moses. That is just comforting and terrifying all at the same time.
Exactly, right?
So, in essence, that's pretty powerful. And you just have to, in humility, realize that, wow, what a call. Okay, with that, I'm going to let Rhonda take a few things because she's going to go into this like unto Moses concept.
Yeah, I just love that the sections here and the redemption of Zion in prophecy.
In 103 going back.
Yeah, is so embedded in the Exodus, in the story of Moses.
I was really missing Rhonda last week because she was going to take this.
Yeah.
So we kind of brought it forward because they connect.
Glad to be here. Anyway, so I don't want to go back into 103 terribly much, but just realize that the redemption of Zion, and we're talking about the redemption that the saints expected
Then,
in 1833.
especially with Zion's camp.
It was a struggle for many of them that they felt like the prophecies didn't get fulfilled, and they got kicked out of Jackson County up into Clay County, and then later on they'll be kicked out of Missouri into Nauvoo, and they're like, well, what are these prophecies not fulfilled? And again, the Lord is creating types and shadows. And you know that he's doing this when he's drawing on the ancient things to predict the end time things.
Yeah, when he's predict the end from the beginning.
And in the majesty of God, he's not only pulling the ancient things to predict the end time things, he's having them act out types and shadows of end time prophecy at the same time. And so we have Zion's camp. And of course, they called themselves the camp of Israel at the time. And so let's just go back to the camp of Israel and let's look at some of these parallels for the redemption of Zion in the end time. For the first thing that we'll see is that there's so many scriptures about end time prophecy that talk about the arm of the Lord and the hand of God being empowered. And we see it here in Isaiah 51. Awake, don't sleep. Awake, arise and clothe yourself with power, O arm of Jehovah. And then watch this. You're going to see.
I was going to tease you. I thought the high priest had the option to sleep in sacrament meeting.
Bestir yourself as in the ancient times, as in generations of old. Was it not you who carved up Rahab? Rahab is the ancient name for Egypt, and who slew the dragon. So we've been to the Egyptian Museum and we've seen the headdresses of the dragon that represented Pharaoh. And there was white and there was red, and it was for northern and southern Egypt and all of that. But was it not you who dried up the sea and the waters of the mighty deep?
Speaking of the Red Sea.
This is definitely Moses again. And made of ocean depths a way by which the redeemed might pass. Now, while we're thinking of all of this, remember D&C 133 as well, that was given historically before D&C 133 was back in section 67 was the time period that was given, and they were told it should be the appendix. But the point is it talks about this end time when the ocean depths, there's going to be a highway cast up out of the deep for the returning tribes in the end time. So there's multiple layers, and this is all a prophetic shadow. Let the ransomed of Jehovah return, and let them coming singing to Zion. Their heads crowned with everlasting joy. Let them obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing flee away. And of course, this theme is going to continue through Isaiah chapter 52. But again, back to our Doctrine and Covenants, and the types of Moses that are all embedded in these Camp of Israel or Zion's Camp chapters. Another one of the verses says, therefore, let not your hearts faint, for I say not unto you as I said unto your fathers, mine angel will go up before you, but not my presence. In the end time, mine angel shall go up before you, and also my presence. So you can see that even here in Zion's camp, this is prophetic for the future. And in time, you will possess the goodly land. So again, in verse 21, verily, verily, I say unto you.
I was going to say, it's almost like the children of Israel before, where they come to the opportunity to go into the promised land, but they end up spending 40 years preparing to go because they're not quite ready. And I think in this instance, of course, it's more than 40. We're seeing, like 100, and I haven't done the math real quick, but before this happens, even going till today. So in essence, I guess we weren't ready to redeem Zion yet, so to speak.
Well, and you can play with so many types and shadows. You can play with the fact that from 1967 to 2027, you've got these numbers, and I think that they're still playing out.
Oh, yeah, there's tons of God loves a great riddle.
Right. So we're told in this parable that Joseph Smith is the man to whom I likened the servant in the parable in D&C 101. And again, that was when he amassed an army to head back to Zion. So let's play with this type of an end time fulfillment here. And in Exodus 14, we're told that the angel of God went before the camp of Israel and removed and went behind them when they got to the Red Sea. So it was in front of them, leading them until the Egyptian army was catching up to them, and then it went behind them as a barrier. And it was the angel of God. And the pillar of a cloud went before their face and stood behind them. The Shekinah, the glory of the presence of God. And it was a cloud and a darkness to the Egyptians. And it blocked them so that they couldn't even see that the children of Israel were crossing the Red Sea that night until morning. But it gave light by night to these, the children of Israel crossing, so that the one came not near the other all that night. And, I think of so many prophecies, like in Ether 4, where it says, you need to rend your veil of unbelief. And when you have the faith like the brother of Jared had, and I think we read over that and we don't realize that the brother of Jared had faith when everything was falling apart and being destroyed around him. And this is the kind of faith that we have to have in the face of an Egyptian army or in the face of elements in upheaval. We need to be able to trust that the Lord is going to be with us, and he is promising in the same way that he will. Now, remember, we said that the arm of power will fall, or the hand will be over the sea. It comes right out of here, out of Exodus 14. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. And the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night. So in this imagery in Isaiah and other places in the end time, that you have a hand of the Lord, and the sea is the chaos of the king of Assyria and his armies. They're called the flood in Isaiah chapters 8 and 10. Then this is the hand over the sea, the hand over the flood. This is all Exodus imagery. And he made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided, and the children of Israel went through the midst of the sea, and their waters were a wall to them on the right hand and on the left. And so, do we believe that this happened? I mean, this is Ether chapter 4 all over the place. Will you rend your veil of unbelief? I am a God of miracles.
Well, if the crossing at Nueva hasn't changed in depth, which I believe it's probable it maybe did, but even if it didn't, that was a pretty tall wall of water.
Right.
I mean, pretty amazing, actually.
And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them in the midst of the sea, even Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And it came to pass that in the morning watch, I love those words. In the morning of the first resurrection, at Adam on Dayamin, in the morning watch, the Lord looked out unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled, I'd say troubled the host of the Egyptians. And again, this is all type and pattern that plays out in the redemption of Zion in the end time. And then I love this imagery as we walk through some of the word links that are embedded in the scriptures here. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. Whenever we're talking about the Israelites, we're talking about a land of inheritance, like we were talking about earlier that I was showing you in 3 Nephi 20 and 21. He found him in a desert land and the waste howling wilderness, and he led him about, and he instructed him. He kept him as the apple of his eye. We love that. We're going to look at that in just a second. As an eagle stirred up in her nest, fluttereth over her young, and spreadeth abroad her wings, and taketh them, and beareth them on her wings. So the Lord alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. And so if you study in Hebrew history, they believe that when you are in the wilderness with God, it's a bridegroom courting his bride. It's God trying to say, trust me, I've got you. And this plays out not only in the wilderness in the Exodus out of Egypt, but in Zion's camp, it's playing out. They're learning to trust. They are learning to find God's blessing in all circumstances here. So the apple of his eye is one of my favorite idioms that talk about the children of Israel. And I love to think about this as Zion in the last days. The original Hebrew for this idiom is in Zechariah 2, verse 8. And it can literally be translated, instead of the apple of your eye, it's the little man in the eye. So what this refers to is that when you're looking at and your eyes are focused on somebody, if you look at the person that's watching, you can see the reflection of what he's looking at
Oh, I
in his
love
eye. So when it says the apple or the little man in his eye, that is an image that God is focused directly on his people, and his people are reflected in his eye.
That's
Some
beautiful.
beautiful idioms going on here. And the eagle and the carrying on eagle's wings is beautiful. If you learn a little bit about the eagle, when young eagles are learning to fly, now just think about being in the wilderness. Think about Zion's camp. Thinking about the us as we walk through trials of whatever kind today or tomorrow or in the past. When young eagles are learning to fly, the mother eagle flies under them with her wings spread out to catch them.
That's beautiful.
And what's amazing about this is a couple things. Number one, if there's a hunter going to shoot the eagle, the baby, the mother will be between the predator and the baby.
Right.
And so it's a protection. But the other thing is that this is such a critical part of an eaglet's development, to watch its mother, to have its mother spread out its wings underneath it when it's learning to fly, that a baby eagle in captivity has to be fed with an eagle hand puppet. Otherwise, the baby eagle gets confused and won't be able to learn how to fly from a real eagle because it will think it's a human.
Right. That's pretty
So the
fascinating.
baby eagle follows the parenting figure.
That's beautiful.
And so that's just another image of what's going on as you're in the wilderness with God.
Actually, it's a really good lesson in parenting too, because, in essence, to have you model for your kids what to do and what to be is probably the best form of teaching.
Other birds carry their young in their talons, but the eagle, they say, upon her wings, so that even those archers who shoot at them flying cannot hurt the young ones unless first they shoot through the old. Holy cow, when you think about the cross on that one. Thus, in the Red Sea, the pillar of cloud and fire was a token of God's presence, interposed between the Israelites and their pursuers. But their end was much more glorious, for God said, I brought you to myself in the wilderness. They were not brought only into a state of liberty and honor, but into covenant and communion with God at Mount Sinai.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So there's so much beautiful imagery there. And playing on this one more time, let's just take a look at the wedding huppah and the imagery here about the wilderness. Thus saith the Lord, I remember the devotion of your youth, your love as a bride, and how you followed me. Listen to this is Jeremiah. How you followed me into the wilderness, into a land not sown. Now I'm maintaining that Zion's camp and the end time redemption of Zion that will replay in shadow of what happened there, other than this time they will inherit the promised lands, that it was a type and a shadow of a wilderness journey as a bride. Rabbi Rashi notes that the goal of the Exodus was to bring the beloved into the king's chambers. Still, this required that the beloved was to be made ready to receive God's embrace. Therefore, when the Lord delivered Israel from bondage in Egypt, he did not take them on the fast track to the promised land. They could just apply all this to Zion's camp, though he certainly could have.
Well, they almost had the shot.
No, there was a circuitous route to take, a divinely appointed wandering, a divine stroll of betrothal, if you will. In order to reveal himself to the Israelites, God had to lead them directly into the desert and shelter them. In the clouds of glory, he embittered waters to make them sweet once again. He let stomachs growl I mean, just think of this in everyday life. He let stomachs growl to provide the bread of life, and parched mouths to give living water from a rock that was struck. God did all of this to reveal to his newly redeemed people that he is the satisfaction of all their longings. He rescued his bride from the house of slavery and now wanted to refine her to receive greater revelation to come. That's what was going on in Zion's camp. He was wooing or courting her in order to bring her beneath the canopy of stars at Mount Sinai. And he needed them to dwell as strangers with him in the desert in order for them to take hold of his love. With that in mind, Joseph Smith said this, "Brethren, some of you are angry with me because you did not fight in Missouri. But let me tell you, God did not want you to fight. He could not organize his kingdom with 12 men to open the gospel door to the nations of the earth, and with 70 men under their direction to follow in their tracks, unless he took them from a body of men who had offered their lives and who had made as great a sacrifice as did Abraham. Now the Lord has got his 12 and his 70.
That's beautiful.
So again, there's so much going on here. It was verse 57 in D&C 107. It said, "These things were all written." Adam speaking to his posterity, and it says that, let's move back up to 56. "Being full of the Holy Ghost, Adam predicted in Adam on Diamond in the valley." This is the same place where the New Jerusalem, this same Exodus in the end time. "Being full of the Holy Ghost, predicted whatsoever would befall his posterity to the latest generation." And then it says, "These things were all written in the book of Enoch, which are to be testified in due time." So Hugh Nibley said that if we ever have the book of Enoch, we now have the book of Enoch. And I don't recommend it for light reading. It's pretty cryptic, but I do appreciate that Hugh Nibley in Enoch the Prophet has
Done a really good
digested
job
a
of
lot of it.
digesting, yeah.
And this is one of the quotes that he gives. And as we're talking about prophecy and being in the wilderness and the end time redemption of Zion, Moses chapter 7 actually parallels the end time redemption of Zion with what happened at the time of the city of Enoch. And you can do a whole literary structure on that, which we don't have time for today. But I will read this excerpt from the book of Enoch on the redemption of Zion. "There is a sort of shuttle service," this is Hugh Nibley, "operating over a period of time between the city of Enoch and the earth. For it has ever been the practice that the angels of the ministry are rising and descending from heaven to circulate all over the earth. In Enoch's day, they gathered all who would be saved into a special toll post, a place, a sort of marshalling area, or get this with your Zion's camp,
Refuge camp, yeah.
a refugee camp, which according to the Apocryphon of John, later became confused with the ark because it was a place of saving. It was a sort of island of light in a vast surrounding darkness, barricaded against the forces of destruction." Oh, this is so cool. When you think of the redemption of Zion, "They entered and wrapped themselves in a cloud of light, and the Lord was among them." So think of the pillar of light. And the Lord says in the end time, "Not just my angel, but me. I will be there." The Lord was among them, for darkness was poured out over all the earth. When all the earth was shaking and in confusion, the angels came down and carried out their assignments. This just gives me so much hope for the end time scenario, which included both destroying all bastard spirits and sons of the watchers because of, you're just going to have to do your Enoch homework to get what was going on there, because of the unrighteousness of men, and seeing to it that all the righteous shall escape and continue to go on living for 1,000 generations. How? "But ye are come unto Mount Zion, Enoch's community, and unto the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to an innumerable company of angels." In the book of Enoch, this is so fascinating to me. All this traffic between heaven and earth is definitely something more than just a story or a spiritual allegory. It's real, just like we were talking about how God fulfilling his promises to the lands of inheritances, both on this continent and the old continent, are real, and they will be fulfilled in the flesh, according to 2 Nephi 10. And it says that it is, Nibley says, it is precisely the persistent harping on the physical reality of the thing that turned the church fathers against the apocalyptic in general and kept Enoch out of the Bible.
They didn't know what to do with it. Yeah. They almost didn't know what to do with the book of Revelation.
So here's that chapter in Moses 7 that's paralleling what happened in Enoch's day with the redemption of Zion in the last days. And all this imagery of one like Moses. And the Lord said unto Enoch, as I live, just pretty powerful.
His biggest
covenant.
Promise almost.
Even so.
I am that I am.
Yes. Even so will I come in the last days. If you didn't know, it was a type and a shadow, right? In the days of wickedness and vengeance, to fulfill the oath that I have made unto you concerning the children of Noah, that I would always save a remnant. And the day shall come that the earth shall rest. But before that day, the heavens will be darkened, and a veil of darkness will cover the earth. Remember, the same thing happened with Enoch. And the heavens shall shake, and also the earth, and great tribulation shall be among the children of men. Did you get the great tribulation
right
to Matthew 24 there?
Right.
Okay.
To the wrap almost.
But my people will I preserve. You remember how the angels came out of heaven in the book of Enoch? And righteousness will I send down out of heaven, and truth will I send forth out of the earth, to bear testimony of mine only begotten, his resurrection from the dead. And because at Adam it's a resurrection, yea, and also the resurrection of all men. It's a reality. And righteousness and truth will I cause to sweep the earth as with a flood, and gather out mine elect from the four quarters of the earth unto a place that I will prepare, a holy city. This kind of ends the debate on, whether or not God really needs to go back and do anything in Missouri, right? A holy city, that my people may gird up their loins and be looking forth for the time of my coming. For there shall be my tabernacle, tying it back to Moses in the wilderness, and it will be called Zion, a New Jerusalem.
That's pretty much nails it there, doesn't it?
Wow. So much beautiful linking going on in these sections.
That is beautiful. Okay, now jumping back into Doctrine and Covenants, obviously 107. And it is according to the vision showing the order of the 70, and there should be 7 presidents to preside over them. We actually jumped clear back to where we were before we jumped into one like
we chase a large rabbit.
Yeah, we really out there. But anyway, now we're jumping clear back to the 70, and we're talking about the organization of the 70. Okay, and it is according to the vision showing the order of the 70 that they should have 7 presidents to preside over them, chosen out of the number of the 70. And the 7th president of these presidents is to preside over the 6th. And these 7 presidents are to choose another 70 beside the first 70 to whom they belong, and they are to preside over them. So this gives the option to order guide. It's more than one quorum of 70, but obviously the first quorum of 70 is this presiding quorum of 70.
Yeah, I wonder if any of the quorums of priesthood have kind of changed roles back and forth more than the quorums.
Well, probably one of the most least understood, I think, in general. Okay, so we're drawing near to the end, and we're getting close to the end here. Wherefore now let every man learn his duty, and to act in the office in which he is appointed in all diligence. I think of all the things we could do.
Isn't that great?
Of all the things you could pray for, learn your duty.
Let's get to the point.
And learn to act this in your duty. That he that is slothful shall not be counted worthy to stand, and he that learns not his duty and shows not himself approved shall not be counted worthy to stand. Even so, amen. So, it's pretty much, those words that, we're still in this season of the memorial of Charlie Kirk and the different things that have happened.
Be counted.
where he said, be counted, but also he said one of his biggest goals was to get to heaven and say, well done, my good and faithful servant. And what a beautiful thing to obtain to in this last verse of 107, to be told by the Lord, well done, my good and faithful servant. I think that would be such a beautiful thing too. And I don't know, I think that he had as a goal and that we should all have as a goal.
Did you say anything about Lyman Sherman in D&C 108?
Not too much. If you want to touch it real quick.
Oh, I just think it's pretty cool that he was faithful. He died in Far West, and the little bit of the backstory on that was that he went to visit the prophet and brethren in Liberty Jail, and apparently he contracted with exposure to the elements, cold and everything, and so he was in the leadership out there in Far West, and he would actually get a letter calling him to the apostleship to replace Orson Hyde, who had signed the affidavit and
temporarily fell away.
But he actually died at 31 at a young age, before he was ever ordained as an apostle. But it's interesting what Heber C. Kimball said later, as Heber said that Orson Hyde was not supposed to be replaced.
Yeah, I was thinking that actually.
So that
Orson Hyde he had his moment, but he came back faithful and stayed faithful to the end of his life. Actually, died close here.
Gosh, you talk about Orson having this moment, and
we all kind of
the fact that moment landed the brethren in Liberty Jail, and Joseph's capacity to forgive people when
brothers at first, brothers at last.
Of all the priesthood courts in history, the one that we have where they actually called the head of the church was Joseph.
Yeah.
And I just the compassion and the depth of character that he learned in time. I guess the W.W. Phelps too.
It made me think, when we talk about compassion, we just had such an example of compassion in the memorial of Charlie Kirk, his wife, when she said she forgave the assassin. Because in the example of Christ, when he said to those who were crucifying him, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And she was basically saying he knew not what he was doing. And I would argue there's some truth to that. Sin is insanity in one form or another. And he fell into the world of insanity, and I'm sure he's in living hell right now. So
let's all stand and act in the office wherein we've been appointed and be counted worthy.
Amen. And with that, this is just such a beautiful experience. This picture here is really fun. This is us on Mount Sinai with a superimposed Moses on the mountain with us. And it's just really fun to have had the opportunities to actually be and see these places.
You see those rocks in the slide? That's the real deal. The whole top of the mountain is scorched.
We had a friend. We brought one of the rocks back.
Look at this rock. They're scorched on the top, but the rock is not scorched if you break off a piece underneath.
So in essence, we had a friend who took one of the rocks we brought back, here, put it in my hand, and created our burning bush for us. That's kind of fun, huh?
On Mount Sinai.
On Mount Sinai, or from Mount Sinai. And I was thinking about it earlier when we were talking about the Red Sea crossing, and I'll probably go back and insert it. Maybe I'll just talk about it now and give it to you. That when we dove in the Red Sea, I believe we had the privilege to find an encrusted chariot. And I'll put that in this video too, just to share with you the beauty of God's plan and everything that's happening.
And the fact that the Exodus is real.
Yeah, it's all real.
And the redemption of Zion in the end time is real.
And a little heads up, we're probably going back to Egypt and Sinai next year, God willing. And we'd love a lot of you to join us if that becomes a reality, which I think it probably will if I hustle hard enough. Anyway.